All right, welcome back to the Gill Athletics Connections Podcast. So happy you're here today. I'm so humbled to be your host, Mike Cunningham, National Business Development Manager here at the great Gill Athletics. And today's going to be a fun one. I think we're going to learn a lot today. This is going to be unique. We got a co-guest, but I call her a co-guest maybe. We'll see. We'll see who all shows up today here on the episode. Help me welcome from Calgary, Canada. That's right. We're going international, but don't let her fool you. You're going to hear an accent here. We're going to find out where she maybe is originally from. Help me welcome the wise, the wonderful Miss Rachel Andrews. Rachel, how are you today?
I'm doing good, thank you.
You sound a little tired.
A little bit, yeah. Baby girl was up too much last night.
Yeah, you have all the excuse in the world. Trust me.
This is full of coffee, so like the whole thing.
Yeah. As a mom of two, which we'll learn more about that, Rachel, you'd be excused to have other things in that coffee as well. So just, you get all the grace.
Not this early.
I think there's studies that show it's good for the kid. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's what happened to my kids. I'm not sure. Well, Rachel, thanks for joining us. You are a really great Twitter follow. And what I mean by that is, I live my life on Twitter. So everything that, I do and consume and everything is on Twitter. I've enjoyed following you over the last couple of years here because you're really open and authentic. And I think we'll find more of that in today's episode with you here as well. But you show a different side of track and field that we don't get to see quite often. One is you're very open with your own training. So how you are actually training for your, I think you're primarily a discus thrower. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So you're very open about successes and failures in that world, which I think is fairly authentic. We like to only show our successes sometimes in that world.
Yes, that's the big temptation for sure.
Temptation, that's right. That's exactly that is the right word, because that means we can also not show, we can show the reality of what life is as well. And I think you do an excellent job there. And then the other side of it, not just your training, but is your motherhood. You're a mom of two, and you again show good and bad. Hey, here's the great, my child is the greatest child in the world. And then it's things like this where it's like, oh yeah, they were up all night. So which means I was up all night. So I just really appreciate that authenticity. I think, I truly believe in the power of social media. And I think, I'm gonna say accounts like you, but you're the real person behind the account. People like you and how you utilize social media is extremely important and real, because it's real. I'm not a big fan of the curation. It is a temptation to curate only the positive, but I do like when someone shows everything. Hey, here's the great days I'm having, boy, here's the bad days I'm having, and so I'm just real thankful for that. I think you're just an excellent person to follow on Twitter, and kind of have that reality check that life is real and real things happen during that life. So before we begin, why don't you tell us what your Twitter account is? That way, if people want to kind of follow that journey, they can follow along.
Actually, I think it's Mrs. Rachel Andrews, but I need to go double check because I've changed it a couple of times.
Okay.
Yeah, Mrs. Rachel Andrews is what I have.
So Mrs. MRS, is that right?
MRS, yep.
And then Rachel,
Chel.
in all one word, no periods and no
periods.
dashes and all that kind of crazy stuff. Perfect. Awesome. Well, if you're on Twitter, I would highly encourage you to go follow Rachel. It's really, I don't want to overstate and say inspirational. What you do in our, you are a mom. Actually, that is inspirational in its own right there. But it isn't, again, just it's a real account of life. And so I just highly encourage you to go follow her, unless you only want to see that everybody does perfect and everything's great. Then don't follow Rachel, because Rachel's going to show you up and down, left and right there. So Rachel, let's get to know you a little bit better here as we work into your coaching career and what you've been doing coaching, and obviously, your own throwing career is continuing to today. Why don't we start wherever track starts for you? Where does kind of track and just in general coaching begin for you?
Oh, that's kind of a long story. So I'm trying to remember how old I am right now.
That's
So
why we schedule 2 hours. We got all the time.
27 years ago now is when I first started track.
Okay.
I was 9 at the time.
Right.
And I got into it because I was wanting to throw javelin. Javelin looked like fun, but I was too young to start javelin, so I had to start with shot put.
So where did you grow up that you even saw javelin? I mean, that's not a common thing for a 9-year-old to see.
No, so I grew up in Kansas, and Kansas was at the time one of 11 states that allowed javelin. So I saw javelin through.
Very
I
cool.
I don't even know if it was at some of the little track meets or something, or if I was. We had this old Olympic tape from the '80s that had John Powell and Al Order and everything on it,
Hmm?
and I would watch the Olympic events over and over again. I had this thing from like about the age of 3 that I'm like, I want to make the Olympics. I just didn't know in what. And then I saw throwing events at about 9. I'm like, I'm gonna go in that.
Oh wow. What was it about the I mean, there's a lot to be said about the Olympics. What was it that you were just like, oh yeah, I want to be there in something, and then kind of found what you wanted to go and be?
I don't watching these old 80s tapes. I loved watching the torch being carried and the people getting their medals on the podiums. I'm, in their track suits. And I was always a very sporty kid, and I'm like, I want to be the best at something. So I'm gonna try to go in this.
Yeah. So you saw the javelin. You grew up in Kansas, and since when you grew up there, you mentioned 11 states. You're really no one ever tells me the exact number of states. That was really like you obviously have researched this a little bit. Luckily, we've added some states: South Carolina, Florida, and
Yeah.
Alabama. Since then, it's growing. We're still not quite 50 states, which I would love, but we're growing almost every year. It seems like. In that, so you saw the stick and was like, I want to do that, and they were like, Yep, not old enough. So here's a shot, but throw this ball.
Yeah, I think it was 11 before they let you throw it at the meets. So I started with shot put, and there was a couple other girls I threw with at the time. I broke a state record my first meet out,
Wow.
and then the 2 girls that I was with broke the state record again and then again. So I didn't actually get it, but like I was like, oh, maybe I could actually be good at this.
Now, who was, I mean, I think at that time, women and girls were actually in track and field. So it's not like I don't think you're starting from the get go of when women were getting into sports, girls were getting into track and field.
So,
So someone had to be coaching you. Who was coaching you at that age?
so my biological father at the time did a little bit. Most of it was from watching John Powell and Brian Oldfield videos. So we had like them on VHS, and I would watch them over and over again, and then just go out and throw for hours.
Oh, cool. You didn't dress like Brian Oldfield though. Okay, good. Okay. Just a sanity check there. Just question.
No, no. I did like watching their stuff though. Like the videos, John Powell especially was awesome to watch. He was hilarious.
Yeah, I love it. So you go out and you just throw in the shot. How does that continue to prosper for you?
Shot put ended up being my weakest event out of all of them. Probably just a lack of understanding of how the whole body worked. Like starting it now, I wish I understood then what I do now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Same thing. I mean, even goes with discus or javelin. Because I hurt myself so many times with javelin that one I really had to drop in college, and we just would pick it up enough for me to win conference, and then
Mm-hmm.
like drop it again.
Did you go through high school in Kansas?
Yes, but I was homeschooled, so I wasn't actually allowed to go to state. I would go to the
Oh,
Kansas relays instead. My final year in high school, I won javelin and won shot at the Kansas relay, so I called that kind of like my state.
yeah. So you did, Kansas, and we just had Brooke Rasnick out in
Oh,
Louisville on the show. The Kansas State meet is a pretty special meet. I mean, tons of people attend, and you didn't get to go
yes.
because you were homeschooled.
Yeah,
Oh,
they didn't want homeschoolers there at the meets. My homeschool association would have been 1A, so I would have dominated, like just
oh,
being
sure.
honest.
Hmm.
Because being able to win at Kansas relays, like you're going against not just the 1 through 6A, but then you've got people from around the other states.
All right.
So that one is a much bigger meet.
And so as you went through high school years as a homeschooler, did dad keep coaching you, or did Brian Oldfield keep coaching you? How did you continue I mean, you kept getting better, so something had to be occurring.
Well, I took on a lot of my coaching myself. I didn't understand anything about weightlifting. And so my weightlifting was, like 4 sets of 10, 5 sets of 10 when
Sure.
I didn't get into really good weightlifting until college, but I would set myself these guideline sheets and like write down how many throws I was going to do in each event per day. And I tapered it. Like I didn't know what tapering was at the time. I just knew if I like did a big load here and then did a smaller load close to my big meet, I did better.
How are you? I mean, that's a pretty high level for a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid to be thinking that way. It's much easier for a kid that age to, throw a couple times and then go play with their friends and, eventually kind of, you got to be structured for that. And you're very structured there. Where does that come from?
Honestly, I don't know. Like I did a lot of reading as a kid, and some of it may have just, stuck in there by osmosis.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I don't remember even reading anything about weightlifting or proper training techniques. Same thing with like diet and, yeah, exercising in general. Like I didn't grow up in this area where like diet was a big deal. Like they'd give you a pie in your lunch every day, and it's just like
Nice.
right. And so like I cut that out in like seventh grade, and then I'm like, well, I'm not going to eat past 8 p.m. because I read somewhere like it's bad for your digestive system, and like it was kind of I was very much a self motivator.
Yeah, right. Were other kids in the homeschool? Because I know a little bit about homeschooling. That you mentioned your homeschooling association. There's usually a community around
Yes.
it. Were other kids interested in track as well, or was this just a
Um,
Rachel only thing?
no, we had a track club for a little bit. So when I was fifth to seventh grade, I was in one track club with our homeschool association, but it was run by a long distance runner, and he made everybody run like 8 laps around the track to start practice.
Oh no.
My calves got amazing in, fifth or sixth grade, but by the time I was done with my warm up, I couldn't move.
Sure. You're like, all right, now go throw. No, I'm gonna go sit down.
Yes. And so he also had a rule that everybody had to run at meets. And after I got dead last at the 100 meter, he's like, no, you can throw now.
Wow. First of all, I love that you broke the rule. He's like, all right, you know what, Rachel? Yeah, I thought that was a good rule. You just go throw.
Yeah. Yeah. I was a bit of a chunky kid at the time. Like I got better at the 100 meter, and I did 4x1 and 100 meter dash through high school.
Nice.
I think I was like 13, 10, 13, 12 for like my
Yeah.
100 meters. So like it wasn't terrible for a
Yeah.
thrower without spikes on. I ran that in basketball shoes. Um, but yeah, like early on, like I was definitely not a runner. And so I really advocate for the kids now as a coach, the ones that are definitely not runners, like just need to come through
Stop.
things.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. There's too far to the, hey, you never know. So they should try a bunch of different events. Somewhere there has to be reasoning like, yeah, okay, we found your event area. Let's just stay over there.
Exactly.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so you go through, you get homeschooled for your education, but you're looking at going on to college. Where did you go and why did you choose that?
So I went to Oral Roberts University down in Tulsa. They are a D1.
Mhm.
I was recruited by a few other colleges, but ORU was the one that really fit. At the time, they didn't have a track, so we went and practiced at a high school,
Yeah.
which was better than what I had done, which was off a parking lot or, a driveway as a high schooler.
Mhm.
um, I really like the whole atmosphere. Like Tulsa, it's like the biggest small town you'll ever be in.
I agree. My a guy who's like my brother coached at the University of Tulsa for a while, and so I'd visited, and that's where he got married and everything. And I would describe it exactly how you just said. It's like, oh, it's the biggest little town that you'll ever go to. Like it's just a little town, but boy, it's got everything. It really is a neat little place there in Tulsa. That's awesome. What was it about Oral Roberts? Was it the throws coach? Was it just the it has a unique culture there as well. The great Joe Dial and Shauna Dial have been there forever. They should probably just change the name of the university to Dial University. That would be much more for the track people for sure. What was it there about Oral Roberts?
The coaches really impressed me. I worked under Chris Brown. So Coach Dial was like the head coach, and then Chris Brown was the assistant, and he worked the jumpers and the throwers. And he really impressed me with my like first visit. And I was like, I really like you. Like we jive well together. I work well with you. It takes me a while to trust people. And so if I can start trusting somebody within like a visit or two, that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to imagine, someone who was very much self-coached through high school, for the majority of it, it sounds like, and then you go to college. Well, there is no self-coaching there. Coach Brown's going to coach you there. How did you
Yeah.
adjust to the, I'm not writing the workouts anymore. I'm listening to Coach Brown and what he's telling me to do.
Um, Well, when I first got into the weight room, I was doing like 2 plates on the leg press, if that gives you an idea, because I had not done like the strength development that I needed to
I
be doing.
I honestly thought you were going to say on the bench press. I was like, good God. On the okay, all right, good.
No,
All
I didn't move up 2 plates in bench press until like 2016.
right.
But no, like just Coach Dial, then he came, one of my first memories with Coach Dial is he came in there and he's like, you call yourself a thrower? What are you lifting?
Hold on. You got to do that a little better with more of a Joe Dial accent.
I gotta get my Joe Dial Southern going on. What are you lifting? You are a thrower.
That's much closer. Oh, I love Joe Dial.
We
He
also
jumped.
had like weigh-ins for track, and he'd weigh in everybody, and they're like not supposed to be over something. He would set the scale, and he's like, "You better not be under this.
Right. Oh, very interesting.
Like,
Yeah.
you need to get bigger. We need you
Yeah.
bigger if you throw things far."
Did you, in a more structured weight program, did you gain strength pretty easily?
Mm. Yeah, by the time I graduated, I had gone from just like 2 plates to, let's see, it was 10 plates on either side. So it was about 20 plates on like
Holy
leg press.
cow.
Yeah.
Dude. I mean, that's quite amazing.
Yeah. So the structured program was huge for me.
And did that translate into better throwing?
Yes. Except for javelin, because I lost a lot of flexibility
Sure.
for javelin and the
Yeah.
injuries. But I went from 45 in high school to 55 in college for disc.
Yeah.
And my shot ended up at 1574, and I think at high school I was at 11 high,
Yeah.
1190.
Absolutely. And what were you studying? What were you wanting a career to be?
Graphic design.
Oh,
So that's what
yeah.
I ended up studying in college. I'd started looking at engineering, and then I settled on graphic design. They're kind of related, but
Did you get
um
to like math class and then it was like, yeah, graphic design's perfect.
no, I'm pretty good at math, but I don't know, like one of the things that I was told was like, if it comes easy to you, it's probably something you were meant to do. And
Mhm.
so art more came easy to me, like seeing things from outside the box.
That sounds a
And
lot
so
like your
that's why,
throwing too.
yes, yeah, you
Yeah.
need to be able to think outside the box.
Yeah. And as soon as you said, if it comes easy to you, maybe that's what you are meant to do. When you talk about your throwing and not having a structured coaching and yet still being successful, that's the first thing I thought. I was like, oh, yeah, you were meant to be a thrower. Like it did kind of come a little bit more naturally to you. Yeah. I like that. That's cool. So, how did the coaching career go in regards to coaches? Coach Brown is working with you specifically. Coach Dial's overseeing the entire program and focusing a lot on vaulters, obviously, but he can coach a lot of stuff. He's a great coach. What did your coaches do for you that were positive as you kind of look back now? You have perspective on what how they interacted with you, coached you, taught you, etc.
Well, Coach Brown, I actually still work with. He's still one of my coaches, and I'm working with him and my coach up here simultaneously. It's nice to get two different people saying the same thing at me. Um, but no, like it's the structured environment was great. Um, Coach Brown, he's got a interesting, like we have an interesting relationship. If I go out there and have a bad throw, he's like, "You suck. You need to throw better." Like, but it's what I needed to hear from him. It's just it works for our relationship. I got mad at an official at conference because he called a foul one time, and Coach Brown comes over and gives me a punch in my like left arm, and he's like, you go and throw it further now." So that's when I threw like my big PB, and shot is like a half-meter PB to win my only win in shot for conference.
How does a coach find that individually? Because I'm assuming, Rachel, so you needed that, but
Mhm.
maybe a teammate needed maybe the exact opposite. Like you would, say, hey, you suck, and that person might just crumble. It's like, oh, that's the worst. You might as well have just punched me in the gut.
Yeah.
How does a coach learn that, or at least maybe in your own experience, how did coach learn that about you that individualize, like, okay, this is how Rachel needs to be motivated, or whatever word you might want to use there.
Well, I mean, like in NCAA one, you spend a lot of time together. Like they are at the college 5 days a week, and like I'd have morning practices just with coach because my schedule didn't work to be with the afternoon team. And then we're in the weight room for 2 to 3 hours. So it's, with a track practice in the weight room, you're with your coach 4 to 5 hours a day sometimes. And then bus trips. And I tended to sit near my coaches because I was studying. I was one of those kids that studied a lot on the bus rather than goofing off.
Mm-hmm. One of the few.
Yes. And you start to learn more about what the athlete really wants. And I think I responded well to sarcasm. And so there's a certain level of sarcasm based on
Mm-hmm.
that. Like he's still very sarcastic with me on some of my stuff. Like if I add a lot of speed on a sprint, he's over here like, you double timed that video to send it to me, didn't you? He's just it's fun. Like he enjoys messing with me, and I'm like, I mess with him right back.
Yeah, I like that. It's interesting. No one style is the right style for everybody.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a real skill to be able to learn this athlete or this group of athletes needs to be spoken to this way and heard this way, and this group of my athletes needs a different tact, and guess what, this group over here needs a different tact. That's a real skill, and I'm not sure it's an easy one to learn either.
No, because I started doing coaching even before I went to college, in high school with some of my high school teammates because I joined another homeschool club and like they knew nothing about throws, so I'd help my teammates out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like it's still something I think in development on picking up what each athlete needs because some of them respond well to the sarcasm. Other ones of them like you need to give them the cookie, like this is what you did excellent. This is what we need to work on. This is what you did excellent.
Right. Yeah. And I think the word you used earlier, it might be the real um, ingredient for that, and that's trust. Like the athlete has to trust I can be my authentic self with coach as well, because that way he or she will know how I am and who I am and what I am, so they can treat me accordingly, versus, well, I'm gonna keep to myself and see how coach is. And and it's like, well, you guys aren't being your real selves to each other. So you sounds like you were able to just kind of be your real self fairly early in the coaching process there.
Yeah, like normally it takes me a while with people. I think I've gotten better about that as I've gotten older, but even with my coach here, I'd known her for 3 or 4 years before I kind of brought her in as my second coach
Hmm.
and really was like, yeah, you know what you're talking about.
Well, you said it takes you a little time to, I think your words were, warm up to someone, but with Coach Brown it was fairly early.
It was very, very early. We had so for my weightlifting, we were kind of convinced, well, you shouldn't do any maxes. And this wasn't on Coach Brown's side. This was more just kind of how I'd grown up. And so he like accommodated that and worked with me as much as possible with that. And so we still had a taper, but I'd be starting the year at like 18 reps. I don't do that anymore. I'm like, that was horrible.
Wow. Yeah.
So we could drop to, 5 or 6 without doing the maxes. I didn't actually start maxing until after my first kid was born.
Wow. Yeah, that's not uncommon, right? And again, we're getting a little too close to X's and O's, but I am curious, as someone who now works out in the gym, and I never max out because I never want to bother anybody in the gym. That's my reasoning. But not maxing out has become more popular. Back when I was in school, we're roughly the same age. We maxed out. I mean, we were probably a pretty terrible program. We maxed out every week. That's excessive. But we did, yeah. Hey, you started 18 reps. Let's talk about excessive. All right. I'm not sure which one's the more excessive there. But now and when I say now, it's maybe last 5 to 10 years, there seems to be more of a push of like 2 rep, 3 rep, 4 rep maxes are more important and maybe safer than the single rep max.
Well, as I've gone through coaching, my thoughts have even evolved on that because like I've got kids that they're not comfortable maxing yet either, or I want to start their base program, and so we'll start them maybe 12 reps and be working them through a base program and not get them to maxing for 3 or 4 years. It really kind of depends on where they start.
Mm.
And so I think the way Coach Brown had set up my base program was really good for my body because I was so injury prone in high school that I needed some of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think not jumping me into maxes, like some of the college coaches now will jump kids into maxes that haven't done any weightlifting. Like it's, more prone to injury. But now I just really kind of change it depending on what the kids are needing.
Mm-hmm.
And even some of our lifts, I'll be like, we can do our 5 rep max on this, but this one we'll do like our 1 rep max on. So like leg lifts is a lot easier to do 5 rep max. But if you're doing bench press, 5 rep max is rough.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. The only thing worse is an 18 rep max.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So I don't know. I think with this, your thinking always evolves as you're coaching. The more you learn, like more coaches you talk to, the more you're figuring out, and adding to your own toolbox.
Why didn't you? I'm just curious. You obviously have a passion for call it human performance, and obviously your own performance, and you coached a little bit in the homeschool group, things like that. No thoughts of ever going into like an exercise science or a education degree, or teaching things like that?
So teaching, when I took my career aptitude test, was at the very bottom of my list. It was like, do not
Oh,
do this, you will suck at this kind of thing.
you will hurt kids. Don't do this.
But athletics was the top of my list. There was no thing in there for coaching or
Right.
kinesiology. And looking back on this, I have a fascination with how your muscles work and how the body works
Right.
together. And so I've studied into the whole exercise science without the degree. And I'm like, I really wish I had at least done this as a minor or something at this point. But when I was going to college, if you were doing exercise science, it's because you were lazy.
Oh,
Because there's so many athletes going into exercise science.
sure.
So I'm like, well, I don't want to be lazy.
That's interesting. Because I mean, there's an obvious connection between you and the body, the human performance and stuff. That's why I was like, man, did that ever cross your mind? Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so we graduate with a graphics design major from Oral Roberts, great institution there in Oklahoma. What came next?
I continued my training with discus because I was trying to make the Olympic team in the US.
Mhm.
Uh and there was also trying to get, work. So the transition going out of college and needing to work and pay bills and train was very interesting. Coach Brown continued working with me, and we'd sometimes go out at, 8 or 9 a.m. before I went into work and get in some throws, and then I'd go into work, like throw my hair up on a ponytail, put my work clothes over the top of my workout clothes and go into work and then go weightlift after work.
Hmm.
My husband and I met in 2011 and got married in early 2012. So like the last time I was in the States was October 2012. So he was there for like my last year of real training in the States. He'd come and weightlift with me. But during all this time, like I was doing like 4 jobs because it was a bad time in the US for jobs.
Mhm.
I couldn't get a job in graphic design. No matter how many places I applied to, they're like, we want 20 years experience for minimum wage. I was like, dude.
Right.
So I ended up painting, which was related, and is like it was a workout. So I got to keep working towards my goal of, fitness while working at the same time, which was ideal for me. So that kind of got me into the whole painting realm.
Tell me more about that. When you say painting, honestly, the first thing I think of is Mr. Miyagi and the up down up down. You might be talking more about like artistic painting.
So the stuff behind me on the wall, this is some of the stuff I did. This is called glazing. And
Okay.
it's a process that you do over the top of paint after you do the regular wall painting. And so that's what I got into. I got into a faux finishing painting company, and we would do faux finishes in all the ritzy houses in Tulsa.
Oh
And
yeah.
I started doing murals for them when they figured out I could do that kind of stuff on a big scale. Like I was doing trees and branches and other things.
Like
So that
forgive me, I'm fascinated with artistic stuff, but I can't. I'm still working on my stick figure, so I haven't quite got my own artistic done. But you were doing, you say murals, so I'm thinking big murals. I feel like you're talking about like the wall, like you're right behind you. You're talking about a full wall, and you're hand doing like trees and landscape stuff.
so the first one I did was just like kind of a shadow tree. Like it was a full size. It was on like a 15-foot wall and then 20 feet wide. And I freehand drew it. And then like we had our whole team paint it, but it was like a single color. It was for a family tree wall so they could hang up pictures.
Oh, cool. Yeah, yeah.
And so they had an idea, and I sketched out the idea to make sure it was the way they wanted it, and then put the whole thing on a huge wall.
Wow. How did you even find you had the skill for that? I mean, that has to be a skill.
It is. I had no idea in college I could do this. I skipped out on the painting classes. I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do web design. And
Right.
no. But I've been fairly good at drawing. And so like my boss at one point, she was like, you think you can do this? You can try it. And I was like, okay, we can always paint over it if you mess it up. I'm like, all right. And then from then on,
Wow.
I
What's been your most challenging or interesting project like that you've done?
well, in my house right now, I've got Calvin and Hobbes up on one wall that I did from a page for my son's
Oh,
nursery.
I was about to say, do that for the little one? Yeah. Oh, that's so cool.
So that one was pretty challenging. I've done a few here where I live, like more trees, like for a coffee shop here in town. The business my husband used to work at was an internet company, and they wanted like triangles and like 20 different shades of orange. So that one was hard to try to find the shades of orange in paint, because you can find it in color on like, a computer, because you got thousands to work from. But paint is not as forgiving.
Mm.
And I did that on a ladder while 32 weeks pregnant with my son.
Oh, man. Holy cow.
But yeah, and then I did some other ones that looked like technical wires going across the walls. I was 8 weeks pregnant with my son at that point, and that one was worse because I was so nauseated, like while
Mhm.
up on the ladder.
Yeah. Holy cow, that's quite amazing. Uh, you know, doing anything while you're pregnant, I think is, like that's just amazing. I just can't imagine doing that. And I'm thankful every day that God made me a guy and not a gal to even get through that, honestly. But to be up on ladders and paint fumes and all that kind of stuff. I mean, just that's quite amazing. The creativity there is amazing.
The paint fumes we don't have to worry as much now about. Like all the paint I used didn't have any fumes, and so it was extra safe to be working around while pregnant. I used to do a bunch of cabinet staining and refinishing, and that kind of stuff I got to wear a big mask for.
Yeah, for sure. Right. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And all this while you're doing these really cool creative things and you meet your husband, you're throwing and training the whole time
Continuing
through?
to throw, continuing to train.
Was or is husband a thrower or any track background? Did he
Not
ever
an
wonder,
athlete at all.
did he wonder like what are you doing? Why do you throw this frisbee?
A little bit. So he's a tech guy, like he's a nerd. We kind of more bonded around Photoshop and like doing stuff on the computer and nerdy things. Because another one of the things I did in the States after I got out of college, I started a computer business because I had no way to make money. So I started fixing computers for people. It's something I'd kind of done as a side hustle in college because people always were breaking their computers or couldn't get it to turn on and their printer wouldn't work. So they'd call me to like come work on their computer.
You're like the ultimate artistic IT.
Yes, yes. They kind of all go well together. Like it works the same side of the brain.
Yeah, artistic IT who also throws. I mean, that's a pretty heck of a triangle combination there. Oh, add mom in there, so now we have a full square.
Yeah, I've been known as a bit of a multitasker, but
Yes, I could see
yeah,
that. Yes,
the
I can
IT part
see that
normally
clearly.
surprises me.
So, husband's from Canada. Is that how you
Yeah,
moved
he's
up to
from
Canada?
Canada. We met online.
Yeah. So, my wife and I met through Match.com. Did you meet through like one of those, or how did you meet online?
So my husband and I were both cheap and didn't have a lot of money at the time. We met on christiandatingforfree.com.
That's awesome.
And I tried like match.com, and it was like, there are no matches for you. You
Yeah.
are weird.
So, what's it like? I don't think I've even really been to Canada. I think I drove up over the border once a long time ago. So what's it like? You've been in Canada now for a few years, the differences of, living in the States versus living up in Canada.
Well, weather wise, it sucks because we've got winter 6 months out of the year and we got to find indoor activities.
Mm,
So
Yes.
I used to be able to throw outside 11 months out of the year, 11 and a half months, depending on, rain and
Sure.
occasional ice storms in Oklahoma, but they'd only last for like 3 days and you can go back outside and throw some more.
Right.
So here we have to get training facilities for indoors for 6 months out of the year and be fighting everybody else for the indoor training facilities. And it's taken me a few years just to figure out how to best use our indoor facility. Like I've got a big tarp now to throw discus into. I've got rubber throwing puds or
Hmm.
discus balls that we use to, not break the basketball court.
Hmm.
Last year, I started doing more weight throw indoors with my kids, but the regular weights we would need like the heavy duty mats for, and I don't have money for that right now.
Right.
So I got slam balls and I put them inside a tornado bag, and those have been working because you still get the same weight. It's not necessarily like the same handle structure, but you still get all the turns and everything in without
Yeah.
breaking, which is nice.
What a shocker, you being creative to figure out a solution to a problem. Yeah, what a shocker there.
It's helped the other clubs around too because they're like, oh, we're gonna do that now.
Yeah, so they see you like, oh, great idea, let's go. So, why, as you continue to throw in your career and being a spouse and now being a mom, why get into coaching? I mean, if we have the proverbial juggler, you've already got 6, 7, 8 balls up in the air. Why go to this? It feels like it's almost like adding a bowling ball into that juggling of tennis balls. One big, hairy goal here to coach throwers as well.
Well, throwing's been my passion for so long that I wanted to be able to pass that on to other people. And I've done so many things wrong that I also know how to get these kids on the right path faster.
Mm.
And I've been asked a lot, like, why don't you just concentrate on your own throwing rather than coaching? And I'm like, but then these kids wouldn't be here. I've got a lot of kids that are competing collegiately now that wouldn't be able to be here if I hadn't been coaching because it's just like the amount of throws coaches there are not very much.
Mhm.
Like I am through our system, it's NCCP coaching qualifications. Like I'm performance coach certified for throws. And I think in the country, there's maybe like 8 of us that are really like at this level.
Hmm.
And then we've got some more that are higher than that, like high performance level. But there's not a whole lot of high performance throws coaches. And I'm living in a small town now that has like 8,000 people. So it's like
Oh,
really
wow.
small.
Yeah.
And like these farm kids hardly even know what track is. And it's like if I wasn't here offering this, like nobody would know.
So how do you, so you're dealing mainly with high school aged kids?
Yeah, started volunteering when I moved up here over at the high school as a volunteer throws coach, and that's largely where I get my club coaches from, club kids,
Mhm.
as I recruit them from the high school kids that want to continue.
And what do it's easy for us to see ourselves in the kids we coach. We were that age at one point in our life. Feels like a long time ago sometimes, but we were that age. Do you see these kids? Do you see yourself in these kids and want to give them a little bit better than what you had? And you had you at that age. Is that a goal of yours, or what's the
That is part
motivation?
of it. I want to give them a much better start and get them into college like with a much better foundation
Mm.
than I had, because I think if I had had a better start at this and actually training properly, like the college career would have been better. Like it was a good college career, but I think less injury prone, even
Mm.
just knowing how to take care of your body, how to rest properly. I'm still trying to fight, how to rest properly because I like throwing too much.
Mhm.
But teaching my kids how to rest properly, how to take proper sets, what tapering is with their weight programs, get them to actually trust their coach. Like, you can ask questions, but trust your coach in the long run.
Mhm. And how many laps do you make them do before practice?
So we're throwers. We don't do a whole lot of laps. If the kids get in trouble, it's go fill the dirt bucket for the hammer so we can fill the holes. Like you're
Oh
gonna go
yeah,
take a bucket and go fill it.
good. So no more 8 laps. You didn't emulate that. All right, good. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
no, not at all. Like most of my throwers, I'm actually doing pretty good if we do a quarter mile, like one lap jog and then a stretch. Like most of them, it's a fight to get them to do that many. I'm
What?
like, importance of stretching is also something we're trying to pass on. I've got some kids that are struggling with that. They're like, I don't think stretching's a good thing. And I'm like, but you've got pains right now that you need stretching for to prevent
Yeah,
it happening.
You're like, trust me, see me today. I wish I'd have done more of this
Yeah.
back when your age.
Yes, I had all these injuries that could have been prevented. I'm trying to help you prevent the same thing.
Exactly, exactly. Do you see much of a difference? It's easy for us to, especially online, pick on American kids. And what I mean by that is, we're lazy, they only want to play football, or they only want to go D1, or insert a lot of other really big and not so great generalizations of young people today. I think we tend to forget what we were like when we were young, by the way. Do you see that in Canadian kids? Is it a similar ask, or is there some reason there's a difference up there?
So just to tell you what the Canadian kids think of American kids, they're always like, what are they feeding them down there? Why are they all so massive and
Ah,
like so gross? So
ah,
there is something that's being done right down in the States. And I think part of that's like starting at a younger age. We're fighting that here.
mm,
Most of the kids don't get introduced to it until they're in like ninth grade,
mhm, mhm.
properly introduced. And same thing with weight training. From what I've seen with the kids, I think a lot of this is more social media. They're like, if I get my name out there, I can get on a D1, and D1 is this clout. Like I made it to a D1 school.
Even in Canada.
Even in Canada, it's more of a yeah, D1. Like but it's more going to the States in general here in
Got it.
Canada.
Mm,
Most of my kids have opted to go to Lethbridge University. Actually, I don't know Larry Steinke. He's one of our Olympic level throws coaches,
mhm,
and he's done really well with his hammer throws program.
mm.
He has Jillian Weir right now, which is our number 2 in Canada.
Oh yeah. Mhm,
He had Liz Gleedle for Jav.
mm,
Uh,
mhm.
and so five of my hammer throwers all went down there.
Is
And
that because there's Simon Fraser is in the NCAA
they
uh,
are.
division? Is there another? I thought there was another Canadian school, but I could be wrong.
That's the only one I'm aware of that's in
Yeah.
NCAA, and they're NCAA Division 2. Well,
Yes.
or
Right. Mhm.
Canada. Um, so I've had a couple kids consider that one, but part of the reason not to go out there is BC is expensive.
Oh.
It's like going to California. Like if you cannot afford to be on campus, and in Canada, we don't do full ride scholarships. They do a bunch of like little scholarships. The
Mhm.
colleges are overall cheaper. Like it's, 4,000 a year to go to college.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I
Like,
don't think I think some schools charge 4,000 to apply to their schools here in the States. It's a
yes.
slight exaggeration, but yeah.
We don't
Wow.
have as much money to go around in general. There was a head coach position that came up for our university in Calgary recently, and they were offering 50K for a head coach position.
Hmm.
And I'm over here like, no, I know what a head coach needs.
Hmm.
It just tells you where our track program is. Like, we don't have all the money to go around. We don't have the big football stadiums and
Right.
like programs. Canadian football is different to begin with.
So I was gonna, and this may be just a terrible stereotype of Canadians in general. Down here we say we're always competing against football. Like football is the big for male track athletes. They if they get into football and then they have to do spring ball and all this kind of stuff, and they don't do track. I imagine that's how it is for hockey in Canada.
Yes, you got
It
it
is.
correct.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. That stereotype holds true. All right. Good.
Hockey is like the only sport they'll start at like age 3 and they'll do it all year round. Hockey camps, hockey
Yeah.
drive training, all this other stuff. And track, for example, in high school, we get 6 weeks, maybe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Like, and that's if the kids show up when I start going out when snow melts.
Wow.
Most of the kids I work with, 2 or 3 weeks for track, and that's their experience of track. And so that's one of the things I've been working on trying to change while I've been up here is like trying to get these kids out sooner, make sure they know it's an offered thing because our clubs will go all year round.
Mm.
But the school system is also different than NCAA. Like when they go to college, they only do indoor track with the college. If they want to do outdoor track, they join a club.
Is that true for Simon Fraser as well?
Simon Fraser is weird because they get to go down to the States and
Okay.
compete.
So they do, because they're part of NCAA, they will do an outdoor, but all the other schools, McGill and
Yeah.
those guys, they're not doing outdoor. That's going to club at that point.
Yeah, let's go to club. So they'll do U Sports indoors. That's U Sports is their big thing, and that's their equivalent to the NCAA Division One like indoor championships.
Okay.
But it's all the colleges will participate in U Sports.
Wow.
But it's definitely been something to adjust to up here because it's like there hasn't been the pressure put on outdoor, which is why if you look at our national rankings, our top 3 or 4 are really high up there, and then it drops very steeply, especially
Mm,
for the outdoor events. Indoor, like shot put's really strong because we have that indoor and outdoor.
right. That makes sense.
It's
It's
definitely
fascinating to me the differences amongst we have a lot of differences here. You described it actually with the state of Kansas. We have a lot of differences culturally in track and field amongst our states, right? So Kansas has javelin, Oklahoma does not, things like that. So it's really fascinating to me when we start talking about other countries. I mean, we're talking about not only culturally for our sport, but how culture of the society affects it. And so here we have institutions. We think in college is like, oh yeah, like you have indoor and outdoor, and the weird ones down here maybe don't do indoor, right? But they're definitely doing outdoor. Everybody is doing outdoor track in the colleges here, and in Canada it's like, yeah, you're going club for that. So the club system must be, and that's probably maybe where CalTaf comes in. The club system must be tremendous. It must be really well built out there than in Canada.
Yes, like the club I'm a part of, I'm pretty sure it's the biggest one in Alberta. We've got a little over 400 kids
Mm-hmm.
and a bunch of coaches. Our coach to kid ratio is like 12 to 1 or something. So it tells you how many coaches we need to have.
Your coach to kid 12 to 1. Okay. Your
Yeah,
kid to
so one coach per 12 kids. Yes,
I
makes
heard
sense.
that as 12 coaches per one kid. And I was like, yeah, I think that's
Yes,
healthy.
we found that many coaches.
It's like, first of all, yeah, how'd you get that many coaches? Can you bring some down here? Second of all, I'm not sure that's healthy.
No, which is why when I say like, it's hard to find coaches, like they've done a really good job trying to fish the coaches out. We get all the coaches that are really available and then, give them their education that they need in order to be good coaches and be able to help the kids progress
Mhm.
and eventually like get these kids into the college system here or down in the States. I think a couple of ours are from last year or down in the States now this year, but we do churn out as many, high level athletes as want to get to that level.
Mhm.
Some of us, just kids are joining sports for something to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. That rings true for US and Canadian kids then. That's true. Yeah, yeah. Nothing wrong with that actually. That's good. So what like if you had a magic wand, how would you improve the Canadian? I'm going to call it the high school side as it goes into college, and maybe this question goes into the college side too. What would you change? Do you like prefer the club system? Like, should America consider more of the club system, or do you prefer more of how we do it here in the States?
The club system really has some advantages because you can stay with them all year round, which is
Mhm.
nice. And then that way you're working with like the same coach all year round and not bouncing from one coach to the next.
Mhm.
The state system has advantages too, just because like nicer weather. Tracks are like everywhere. We had the closest track to where we're at right now is 45 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, the closest nice track is going to be like an hour and 15.
Um,
It took me 4 years to get rings built where I live, and that was
just
partly
rings.
just the rings, yes, because the where I live, the high school and college share grounds, and so there's 3 heads I have to talk to in order to get things approved.
Mm,
So even like getting the cage, it's on my to-do list, but I did fundraising for these rings to happen. It's like $4,000 for like the rings to get poured and for the hammer ring insert and the toe board. And
mm,
I did the bolt down method for my rings because it was cheaper at the time.
mhm.
And like it still works well, but like it's just that's what I could do at the time with the
Right.
what funds I had. And I was fundraising with one babe in, a car seat and going around town and trying to get stuff. And my next plans are a lot more money, like getting a
Yeah.
cage, getting an actual shot put sector set up in shale and everything.
Right.
A lot more approval involved because then groundskeeping has to work around the cage.
Right. Yeah. 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 Absolutely. And
The club system, we don't have a whole lot of money. So an advantage with the school system is they'll get money from all the other school sports happening, and the school sports
mm,
are huge schools down the States. Like Tulsa has Jinx and has Union, where they've got huge football programs that can pay for
mhm,
stadiums and tracks.
right. Yeah.
And we could really use that. We need more tracks. We need more stadiums. We need indoor tracks. We have one indoor track that everybody uses in Alberta.
Mhm.
and then a partial indoor track that we try to use, but they don't like us using because it's right next to the Olympic Oval, and somebody threw a weight onto the Olympic Oval one year and broke the ice.
Oh, that feels like a sin in Canada.
Yes, yes, because it's like it's actually one of the Olympic training centers, and it's like, big chunk of ice for them to
Oh,
practice their speed skating on.
yeah, that feels like the equivalent of you messed up the football team's playing ground. Like, you threw a hammer in the football field. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, did that person get deported? I feel like that person lives in America now.
They're the reason that weight throw is no longer allowed in there, but
Oh.
yeah, so we need more of the dedicated facilities, and it's hard to get track taken seriously when you can't build the facilities, but it's at the same time you can't build the facilities without it being taken seriously. It's the
Yeah,
whole
chicken and egg. Yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah. We say chicken and egg. What do they say in Canada? Like syrup and maple tree or something? I don't know. I probably just offended every Canadian that's listening right now. I'm so
No,
sorry.
no, every Canadian's gonna laugh at that because
Okay,
they're
good.
making fun of themselves with the whole maple syrup joke.
Okay, good. Whew, man. Hey, I watched a fascinating documentary on maple syrup, and I never thought I'd ever watch a documentary, but there were like maple syrup mafia wars basically on how you procure the syrup and the land and how you sell it and how you put it to the market. There was a whole black market. It was there was more to syrup than I thought than just pancakes and French toast, to be honest with you. Yeah, there's
It's a big deal, especially like more East Coast, Ontario area. Like when you go out there, every store's got maple syrup in it. It's like fresh, locally sourced maple syrup.
I love it. Well, Rachel, one of the things we, talked about a little bit here at the beginning of the episode, we talked about your motherhood. And, one of the cool things, and it's kind of just a cool thing, just in general, to see kids being introduced and involved in the sport of track and field and specifically throws, watching your kids at practice. You have them at practice. You had them at practice before they were born. You did a quite extensive training. I don't know how far into the pregnancy, but very far, I know, up to it. What does it mean to you to be able to have your kids involved in one of your obviously many passions and talents there? But what's that mean to you to have them involved from not even day one, before day one?
Well, I've really enjoyed being able to introduce them to track. I hope they want to take on track. It's not something I want to really push, but it's kind of hard for them not to get it into every part of their system when they are coming out to track practice with me 5 days a week when it's nice enough. My son, like his technique in javelin and discus particular is better than most of my high school kids. Like
Really?
yeah, he's throwing like a 600-gram javelin, like 12 meters, which is pretty good because he
Wow.
stands 4'5".
Wow.
And then discus, he's got his proper little hand flip, and like he'll try doing a spin. So he's picking up on things, and every once in a while now he'll be like, "Mom, can you coach me?" And I was like, "Oh yes, I can definitely coach you."
Like, you were right, I will.
Yeah, and then 20 minutes later, I'm giving him little pointers. No, Mom, I'm done being coached right now. I'm just gonna throw things.
Hey, that's good if you can abide by that, right? I mean, because you don't want to push, but I know it has to be hard. And now he throws something, you're like, yeah, but if you would just just do this, and
I'll give him little pointers here and there, but I definitely don't want to push. I want it to be, if he wants to get into it, I want it to be something he wants to do. I feel like I could make my kids like phenomenal. Like if you look at Jason Tunks and be able to have his girls grow up with discus and what they have done, like I feel like that's what my kids could be doing if they want to get into it.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of great examples of lineage out there. From, you mentioned the Tunks, I think of the Cantwells, Capos, and of course going back to the Krausers, and the Skippers. Families that were just, their whole families were throwing. I think for it to work for your kids, we got to get the husband on board. There's some masters track. He can. It's not too late. I think he can get out
I
there.
had told him that.
Yeah.
But it's not his jam. Like he prefers biking, which I'm like, that's cool. Like do the mountain biking thing and
Yeah. Yeah.
so they get different things. Like it's nice with us because we are two different spectrums. So they get a good balance of lots of different things in life, more than just like sports world with me or computer world.
Mm. Yeah. Right. And what, we talked about, that's more of like the athletic side of, you being out there and throwing, and the kids seeing you and things like that. How do you I don't know, handle or deal or just do? Maybe do is the right word. How do you coach while the kids are? I'm going to call it around, but they're never not around. Even if they're not with you, they're in your mind space. You're a mom, for crying out loud. How do you handle coaching as a mother of two?
Well, like the whole having the kids around, I think I only had a very short period where I didn't get to have a kid with me because my husband would come pick my son up and take him somewhere. But now I'm at the point with a nursing baby that she's with me all the time. So I've got at least one at all times. And my athletes that I work with kind of get used to me starting a sentence and then going to a kid for a second and then finishing the sentence.
Mhm.
Because you get distracted so often. My son, when he's out at practice, he's yelling for mom to watch something, normally climbing the foul pole over at the baseball field
I
right now.
saw a picture of that. I'm not sure, as someone who makes foul poles, I'm not sure I can condone that. I love the free spiritedness, but
Yeah, I'm like, if you get stuck up there, I'm not coming up because it's not going to bear my weight. It will break. So yeah, like it's a pretty heavy duty foul pole, but I'm still like, it won't hold me. And I'm kind of surprised it holds you.
he looked like he just shimmied right on up.
He does it constantly. I practice, like he'll go up there 12, 15 times and show everybody, stick a hat up there and be like, my hat's stuck. And then be down at the bottom and shaking the pole hat off.
Wait, so he's got humor too. That's great.
Got his daddy's sense of humor on that one, but the physical humor.
I don't know how my hat's stuck. That's great. That's great. Have you noticed, you've been coached by um, people who don't have kids around, and now you are coaching as someone that with kids around. Have you noticed any positives, not necessarily to the kids being there specifically, although there might be, but to your demeanor, your style of coaching, your style of interacting with the kids? Has there been benefits received from becoming a mother and still being a coach?
Well, I think it's been inspirational for the kids. I know when I was younger as an athlete, I was told, once you have kids, your sporting career is over. You are done until those kids graduate high school. You can't do anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's shown a lot of people that yes, you can continue doing stuff. It's not necessarily easy. You just have to figure out a new routine of what looks like your normal. And I know as for the females especially, they've been more inspired by it. And some of the masters athletes who are like, I did this whole kid thing and I dropped out of sports for 15 years, and you're over here showing that you don't have to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I gotta say that it really helps to have a support system because my husband's very supportive of this whole thing, and I do remote work for most of my work when I make money. So I'll do my work in the evenings, like after the kids are in bed or in between track meets and things. It's harder for me to do the structured work anymore with kids. I've had this one with me on painting, and I've had my son with me painting and like backpacking them while painting and doing rolling and stuff. And it's hard, and I work slower.
Sure. Yeah. That's what I was thinking, them strapped on your back. That's kind of that picture I had there. Yeah.
But it's actually funny when you say, like, thinking back to when I had Coach Brown back in college. His kids were about the same age as my kids are now, and I'm about his same age as when he was coaching me. And he would bring his kids out to practice every once in a while, like because his wife would work later. And so I'd have his, 3 or 4 year old helping me pick up my discuses. And
Mhm.
crazy to think that 3 or 4 year old is now 18, but
Right. That's right. And Rachel, knowing that every situation is different, you being a mom and where you're coaching and your career is different than like I think of Gill podcast alum Lakedra Stewart. I think Lakedra Hayes now, I think she just got married, who recently had a child, and coaching high school track and field down in Texas. That's different. There's no same comparisons just because you're a mom or just because you're in coaching track and field. So knowing that your situation is unique to you, what advice, we've talked in the past here on the podcast with men and women both about, how to increase women in coaching. It's roughly 50-50 on the participation side as far as athlete. There's roughly 50% women, 50% men. And yet when you go into coaching, and you brought up a great stat that I'd like for you to discuss too, but when you get into coaching, it certainly is much less. I mean, there, if you look at even just our list of 200 and something coaches we've had here, we're pretty reflective of what the coaching market is. There's not a lot of women on our podcast because there's not a lot of women in coaching. What do you, what, I don't know, advice, recommendation, encouragement, what would you have to other women who either are not wanting to start a family because they feel like it'll stop coaching, or feel like because I do have a family, I can't coach? What might you say to them?
Well, I think with coaching, it's more like you're in business for yourself kind of thing. You can take your kids along. It may not be your most ideal thing, but you can bring them. Uh, Here in Canada, they've really been doing a movement to get more women in coaching. They did a census, and it's about 50-50 for women and men at the grassroots level, but the higher you get, the fewer women we get. And at the very top level, like Olympic coaches, is like 4 to 8%. I think 8% was at their high point. And there really should be no reason for this when you
I'm
have.
surprised it's that high just from observation. Honestly.
And I don't know what the efforts are in the US to try to get more women coaches, but they're offering some scholarships here for women coaches. I'm actually in a mentorship program right now for coaches, and I'm working with Georgette Reed as my
Mhm.
mentor coach. She was one of our Olympic shot putters.
Okay, so I know that name.
Yes. So it's nice to be able to be mentored by one of our women coaches that was at the higher level, because we don't have very many of those.
Right.
And the club I'm a part of is very unique in this respect, because our head coaches that are part of the club, Paula McKenzie, she was an Olympian bobsledder for Canada. I think they got silver on
Wow.
her bobsled team. And then my coach, Kim Cousins, she is another high level coach. She's done a lot of para athletes. Um, and she's got a lot of able-bodied athletes too, but like she's one of the highest level coaches for throws in Canada.
Mm.
And that's unusual that we have such high level female coaches on this team. Our head coach for the JD development group is also female. Our head coach for Cheetahs is female, which is our young kids, like 12 and under. Hi, you saying hi? We did get our co-guest. Yeah.
So
Um,
most people do. They just point at me like, "What in the world?"
I think our club is helping to boost some of those numbers of female coaches, and then they're increasing our education as much as they can. Like every year, the club will help pay for coaches' education to get all the coaches up. Right now, their goal is to get all the coaches to performance level status, which is, they used to have numbers for all these out of 5, and now I don't know where this correlates on numbers, but
Right, right.
the next level after performance coach is high performance coach, which basically means going back to college for a little bit.
Mhm.
I don't have to go right now for obvious reasons.
Yeah, sure. Do you think it's what's keeping women out of coaching? Do you think it's uh, there is a lack of interest component. And I don't mean that necessarily here, but what I mean by that is like with teachers, there is more of an interest in women that want to become teachers than men. Maybe nursing, there seems to be more women in nursing than men. Is it that way in coaching? Is it just one of those things that's like, you know what, women just don't have as much interest as men in coaching, specifically track and field we're talking here, obviously.
Yeah, I think some of it is the intimidation factor, where they see it as a male dominated field.
Certainly.
And so we mentioned what I went into in college. I went into a very male dominated field, which is graphic design. I went into computers, which was also very male dominated. So I think part of me just keeps going into male dominated fields.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why it's like a male dominated field in track and field. Coaching in general seems to be a male dominated thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so women just kind of feel intimidated, and women in general be like, oh, there's somebody there already. I don't want to like push them out.
Right.
In a way, sometimes we're a little too nice. When they don't think that they have the qualifications. And this is something we've been talking about in our mentorship program, is you need to not sell yourself short. You have the qualifications to do this, and you need to go out there and help kids. And when you start thinking about it as helping these athletes to achieve their goals, we're getting more women coming out for that.
Mm-hmm. Well, what can I'm going to ask you to speak for the other side, the guys. What can we do as administrators, current track coaches who are male? What can we do? Again, I don't know if encourage is the right word, but maybe it is. What can we do to help um, I don't want to increase the number of women coaches if it's just a fake increase, meaning like, oh, I'm forcing women to coach. They don't really want to coach, but we need women. But I do want to make sure that we are leading and making sure that women know that the door is open. Like if you want to coach track and field and you're a woman, that potential is there and it's needed. So, what
Mhm.
can administrators and coaches do to show or make sure that the door is open for that potential for a female candidate?
Well, I can speak to this as far as what I've been doing, even with
Sure.
my own kids. Like I'll have kids starting in ninth grade and then hopefully to 12th grade. By the time they get to 11th or 12th grade, I put them into those coaching positions with the younger athletes.
Mm,
And the ones that show an aptitude for it, then I'm, trying to encourage them to go into coaching programs to like keep going and pass their knowledge on. So I've had a few that have taken me up on that and they like enjoy the coaching thing and find that that's something they like. I think it's something that we can introduce at the high school level because that's when they're taking all their leadership classes and whatnot.
yes.
That's an aptitude that they have to get more women coaches into it earlier on and encourage the athletes that are retiring to become female, coaches out there. But I think starting them young, because I think that's where I started. I started
Right.
coaching in high school and found I enjoyed it.
Mhm.
Enjoyed helping somebody else reach their goals and throw far. The excitement of seeing a kid, throw far was really worth it. And, you've still got to deal with the down days and figure out how to do that. And that's a continuing effort, but introducing them early is just like introducing kids early to sports. They won't know they've got aptitude for it unless they actually get introduced.
Yeah, I just kind of thought of something as you were saying that. You said that really well. Because earlier I said that there seems to be more women interested in becoming teachers. Well, if that's the truth, and half of our track participants are girls on the high school level, well, that means those half, I shouldn't say the majority, a good number, the highly likelihood of those girl track and field athletes in high school are going on to become a teacher in some form or fashion. Well, that means that there's a high likelihood that there's a track team for them to be a coach at. And we as coaches, both men and women, are hopefully doing a really good job of encouraging our athletes, whether it's in the athletic realm or the academic realm. Maybe it's one more step if we know of if we're coaching high school and we have a girl athlete who is going to go into college and become an education major. Maybe we need to add one more step of encouraging that, hey, you're going to become a teacher. That's awesome. You kind of love this track stuff. You should really consider also coaching track one day as well. Yeah, that's just kind of as you were talking, it was like connecting the dots of some of the things I said, and you said it's like, oh, maybe it's just more encouragement of like, hey, this is a possibility for you. You did track, you might, if you really, you don't have to, but if you loved it, like it'd be awesome if you helped out other girls to wherever you become a teacher at, or become a professor, and or go on to just be a full time collegiate track coach as well. That's obviously an option out there as well.
Because a lot of men will start coaching early. Like most of my guys, I don't need to even encourage them to start coaching. Like they'll be out with me for 6 months and they're like, I know this stuff, I'm gonna go coach this kid. And most of my girls don't just assume that. I'm like, you can go coach them.
You know,
So it's
but
a cultural thing too.
it is. When I used to say I liked coaching women more than I did men, and the reason being when I coached men, every one of them thought they were going to win the gold medal. So I almost had to like knock them off their perch. It's like, man, you don't even practice good enough to make the squad. What are you talking about winning
Right.
the gold medal? Right? But on the women's side, even I had some highly talented. I had a 22-foot, 44-foot long jump triple jumper woman, and she every day thought she wouldn't even make our conference meet. I'm like, you're an All-American. Like it was always building up. And I enjoy building up people more than taking them off their pedestal, if you will. So I think, that attitude needs to continue on from the get-go with our coaching. It's like, man, we need to continue to uplift people. And if you see aptitude in someone as a teacher, because that's what a coach is, or someone who just has passion for track and field, I think maybe we just need to do a collectively societal better job of encouraging and building them up of like, hey, you know what's a possibility for you? You could be a track coach one day. That's definitely, that's not taboo. It's not outside of you're not allowed to do that. That is absolutely something that you could do to make society better, is becoming a track and field coach.
Well, and I've got one girl right now who had the same kind of attitude your girl did, where she didn't think she was good enough. And I'm over here trying to push her towards Legions, which is our elite high schoolers, like U16, U18. It's their nationals. And that national team is paid for if you make the Legion standard. Like, and that last year it was out in Quebec or New Brunswick or something. So it was a flight and a hotel and everything. And she's like, oh, I don't know if I'm good enough. And so she goes to our provincial championships, which are the equivalent of state, and she wins all 3 events. And I was like, I told you you were good enough. And she hit standard in one of those events there.
Oh, wow.
And so she ended up hitting standard in 2 out of her 3 events and almost hit standard in the last one. The standards are set so high that if you hit them, you're going to medal at nationals for the paid teams, because they're paying for the kids. They don't want to just pay for 8th place to fly.
Right.
But it's funny because then I've got a boy who's over here like, I'm going to break the national record. He's setting marks out at 65, and he's throwing 30 right now. The boys are not lacking in the confidence department. And then I've got girls who are good enough, and like she's the daughter of one of our Olympian basketball players, so she's got like Olympian in her blood here.
Genetics, yeah, I can't beat that. Yeah,
she's a fantastic athlete. Like I had one a few years back that was another one for girls that just like had all this aptitude in all these sports, and it's just like I see the potential. It's coming. Like we could get full ride scholarships down to the States if you want to go.
Hey, that right there is the superpower of a coach. The ability to see something in someone else before they can see it themselves. So the ability to see like, oh man, you're right there. You absolutely can, have full scholarship. You can do this. And then you got to deal with the how do we take just a little bit of that confidence from the male sometimes? Just a little. We don't need to take it all. Just a sprinkle back over here on the women's side, and maybe in the world would be amazing. I'm so proud and happy of you, Rachel, because somewhere someone sprinkled confidence on you to give you the confidence to go into your academic world that you went into, to the obviously the throwing world, and that you're still throwing today. I mean, that to me says a lot. We talk a lot about track and field being a lifelong sport, and you're actually living that out, even with much more important responsibilities coming along as we watch throwing. See, he just can't help it. He throwing. They just want to throw.
She loves throwing things. Well, I think my grandparents were kind of the ones that sprinkled that into me, because they were super supportive of all my track stuff and like always asking about it. And are you made it to the Olympics yet?
Oh man, come on. That is awesome. I love it. I love it. Well, Rachel, you are an Olympic level mom, and that is one of the most important roles that you have out of the many, many roles that you have of, wife and professional and thrower and coach. Mom certainly ranks, boy, if it ain't number one, I don't know what is for you out there. And again, just so thankful for, first of all, for you being here today, taking time out of your obviously busy schedule. See, this will be the podcast that I show other people when they tell me they're too busy to record. I'm like, you know what? She wasn't too busy. Come on now. But just so thankful again for your authenticity on the social media world as well. I think it's super, super helpful for people, men and women alike, to see that, what real world is, and guess what? Real world can absolutely be a part of coaching in that real world as well. So I'm just so thankful for you, Rachel.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. Like, it's a real honor, and it was not expected at all.
Well, we have a common friend in Miss Auntie Throw Something, right? I mean, you talk about another just positive light in this world, another podcast alum as well. And actually, she is, Auntie Throw Something. I don't know if you know how big of a deal she is, but here's how big of a deal she is. Out of the 216 episodes that we have out there in the podcast world, she is a top tenor. She is in the top 10 of all podcast episodes. And I think that's a real testament to her story, which is amazing, but also just her guiding light of positivity and love and reaching out and, just care for others that she has. So I'm glad we have that friend in common, because that's a good friend to have.
Well, and speaking of somebody who's a good follow, like she's always got positive stuff going on,
Yes.
each other up. I don't know how much time she spends on Twitter, but she finds all these people to build up and shout out to. So
And thank
I
goodness for
doesn't
people
surprise
like
me
her.
she's top 10.
Right? Exactly. Well, Rachel, thanks for being here on the Gill Connections podcast. Again, so thankful for your time. I know how busy you are, having two of my own, not that young anymore. I survived that time period as a father, but again, so thankful for you spending some time with us. Thank you for being here. I love your shirt. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you're a star already. I know. Look at that smile. Yeah, there we go. Just keep throwing. Just go a little farther back. Just keep throwing. Okay.
She's throwing everything right now. I think she likes the hammer the most, so I'm in trouble.
Yeah, I love it. That's my favorite. I know. I know. I know. Can you tell everybody bye bye? Can you say bye bye?
Don't have that word yet, but she'll wave in places.
She'll get there. Her first word is going to be like hammer or something like that. That'll be great. Rachel, thank you so much. We do appreciate you being here. Have an awesome week. Okay.
Thank you.
And thank
Appreciate
you, absolutely, and thank you for being here and listening. What a great episode! I knew this was going to be a lot of fun, because I knew we were going to have a co-guest that would wake up and get to talk to us here for a little bit. So I'm so happy that she got to be. Oh, that was almost a headbutt, Mom. Oof, I've had those, man.
it.
Yeah. Oh. But so thankful that you'd be here again listening to us. Join us next week here on the Gill Track and Field Connections podcast, and we'll bring you another outstanding coach. Have a great week, everybody.